They are brassy.
Yes, thank you.
Classy, brassy.
Fancy, fancy.
Sounds pretty great.
Who's sick of that?
And then, okay.
I mean, David gets off in time for dinner. He won't
Neat.
Put it right behind. But
I'll put it right behind. Yeah. I thought about leaving it in the car, and then I'm just like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, it's, you never know.
I know.
Okay. So,
How are you?
Okay, how are you?
There you go.
Good morning. Is this on?
This is not on, is it?
Bill's back there trying to, he looks like he made adjustments.
Good morning. Now it's on. Yeah. Hi, my name is Linda Randolph. Hey, Bob. Hey. I'm a member of the board of directors of TVUUC, and I'd like to welcome you on that behalf and program council. We do welcome you. Thank you. Whoever you are, wherever you are, and wherever you are on your journey. If you'd like more information about TVUUC, I think there are cards in the back of the seat in front of you that you can fill out and put in the collection plate. Someone will contact you. Per the CDC, Knox County's current risk level is low. So at this level, masks and vaccination are encouraged but not required in indoor spaces. The full policy can be viewed online on the TVUUC webpage. Lizzie Crozier-French room over there is a designated viewing space for those who prefer that everyone be masked in the room. Room A is designated for families with masks required for all over the age of 2. You can also watch our services online. I was reminded to say, as far as COVID, we are trending up. So we can all expect to be back in masks. That is our expectation, certainly not our hope. I have an announcement about the auction. You can still bring in your items on Monday and Tuesday from 4 to 7, and also pick up your items Monday and Tuesday from 4 to 7, and in the Lizzie Crozier-French room after the service. Please silence your electronic devices, and we'll enter into worship.
This prelude tells the story of a sleeping mountain that in the night a cloud passes over it and rains on it, leaves that mark of the rain, and then in the morning the cloud wonders at this experience, this fleeting experience. And we take this as a metaphor for the fleeting experience of music passing over, leaving the memory of it in our minds.
Good morning. I'm Suzanne Brown, and I'm going to read our opening words by Margaret Weiss. Come into this place with your whole self, the parts that are raw and exposed, the part that is beaming with joy, the part that is seeking the truth, the new, the possibility. Come into this place. Open your heart. Lay down your burden. Lift up your hope for something new to happen. Come into this place with fellow travelers on the journey, some faces new and others familiar, and all welcoming you here, now to this moment. Come, let us worship together.
I invite you to be seated for our quartet.
Good morning. It is good to be gathered today in all the ways in which we gather here in this room, in other spaces within the church, and at home. Welcome. I'm glad to be here with you. And I have, our Time for All Ages this morning is inspired by a book by Monique Gray Smith, who is a First Nations Canadian author of Cree and Lakota descent. And she's written many books, a number of which we have in our Children's Diversity and Justice Library. And one of them is one of my favorite little board books that we have. It is called My Heart Fills with Happiness. Can you imagine your heart filling with happiness right now? Think about what that feels like when it does. And Monique writes in her book, she says, my heart fills with happiness when? And she shares a number of times when her own heart fills with happiness. She says, my heart fills with happiness when I see the face of someone I love. Can you see the face of someone you love? You might have someone you love who is here where you are right now, or you might see in your mind the face of somebody you love very much who is nearby or who you have not seen in a very long time. Who here has a heart that fills with happiness when you see the face of someone you love? Monique goes on to say, my heart fills with happiness when I smell bannock cooking in the oven. Does anybody here feel happy when you smell the sense of something you love to eat cooking? What are some of the things that you love to smell cooking? Bread. Roast chicken. Garlic. Roast. Boiled peanuts. Cookies. Some of us smelled some cookies recently. Anything chocolate. That warm chocolatey smell. Tofu. Cider. I like that smell. Yeah. She says, my heart fills with happiness when I sing. I suspect we might have some people here who feel joyful when they sing. Does anybody here fill with happiness when you sing or when you hear beautiful singing? Enthusiastic singing? Yeah. She says, my heart fills with happiness when I feel the sunlight dancing on my cheeks. Does anybody here feel happy sometimes when you are outside? She says, when I walk barefoot through the grass. Yeah. She says, my heart fills with happiness when I dance. I suspect there are some among us here who are joyful dancers. She goes on to say, my heart fills with happiness when I hold the hand of someone I love. And the picture in the book is of perhaps an adult and a small young person holding hands. Does anybody here ever like holding the hand of someone that you love? And she says, my heart fills with happiness when I listen to stories. You don't have to feel obligated right now to say that your heart fills with happiness when you listen to stories, but is there anybody here who loves listening to stories this morning? Sometimes your heart fills. And she concludes and she says, my heart fills with happiness when I drum. And that is something that is personal for her and cultural for her. Is there anybody here whose heart fills with happiness in making music or making a strong rhythm? And she concludes by saying, what fills your heart with happiness? And so our invitation today is to think about what fills our heart with happiness and what can we do in this coming week that brings more joy into our lives and offers more joy to others. And I would love to hear from you when I see you anywhere in the church today or in the coming weeks. What is something that fills your heart with happiness? Thank you. And now our learners and leaders who are heading to our religious exploration spaces will head out while we share our recessional.
Don't Hesitate by Mary Oliver. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give in to it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind. and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb.
Here is a prayer which was written by Cricket Hall and for the season of Advent, which is a time of waiting. Let's enter into a spirit of prayer or meditation. In this time of waiting, may we hold the world in our hearts. In this time of waiting, may we hold each other's hands. In this time of waiting, may we be thoughtful and introspective. In this time of waiting, may we delight in the darkness and all it teaches us. In this time of waiting, may we rekindle the fires of hope, love, joy, and peace within ourselves and in our communities. In this time of waiting, may we become ready for the coming day. In this time of waiting, let us enter into a time of silent worship together. Amen.
Good morning. Contrary to the bulletin, I am not Tina Becker. My name is David Massey, and I'm a member of the spiritual care team. This morning, we are mindful of a deep concern: the reality that members of the LGBTQ plus community, and especially those who are transgender and gender nonconforming, are the targets of an unrelenting campaign of hate and violence. We are distressed that members of the trans community in and around Knoxville, Tennessee, are living in fear, not out of some unfounded paranoia, but because of a very real increase in harassment that includes specific death threats against specific individuals. We are mindful that in less than 1 month, the Tennessee General Assembly will convene in Nashville, and that already, 3 bills have been introduced, Senate Bills 1, 3, and 5, that target the trans community in an effort to suppress and oppress and criminalize people and their supporters who simply want to live their lives freely and honestly and openly. And yet, despite this darkness, we can celebrate the fact that as individuals and as a community, we have the capacity to organize, to speak up, to speak out, to fight back. Let us, in fact, find joy in standing up for the worth and dignity of every human being. Let us put happiness in the hearts of members of the transgender community. Because in this Unitarian Universalist community, we take care of each other and we take care of our community. When we care for one another, our connections become stronger. When we care for one another, we weave and strengthen that interdependent web of existence that sustains us. Many of you in this congregation help weave that web of support and care for others. Within the congregation, you give rides to those of us who cannot drive. You telephone those of us who need to hear a friendly voice. You prepare meals for those of us who need sustenance and support. You visit those of us who are confined to our homes. You prepare get well and sympathy cards for those who need a voice of friendship. In the larger community, you deliver groceries to those without food. You gather clothing and blankets for those without heat. You advocate for those without adequate transportation, for those who are victims of violent crime, for students who suffer inequities in our school system. You stand up for justice for all people. There is sorrow in the fact that this outreach is needed, but there is great joy in the fact that so many of us are able to answer the call. There is joy in the connections and friendships that are made. Mark Mahundro is recovering from a complex surgery just a week ago tomorrow to repair his very badly broken right foot, so he can't drive. Also in our hearts this morning is Captain Chance Adams. In the midst of recovering from the respiratory illness RSV, Chance yesterday fell flat on his forehead, necessitating many hours at a care clinic and then finally at the ER, where thankfully a scan revealed no internal injuries. He's got a big headache. So please direct your prayers and healing energies this morning to Chance, to Trish Adams, and to Ben Hicks. Just a reminder that you can call the pastoral care phone line to discuss a personal matter, to share a joy or a concern with the congregation, and to arrange for rides to the doctor and similar needs. That number is in your order of service and in the weekly newsletter. Finally, after the service today and every Sunday, please stop by the caring table in the Greg McKendry Fellowship Hall to add your name to messages of support that will be mailed to those in need of our good wishes. Let us acknowledge and hold in our hearts all of this congregation's joys and concerns, spoken and unspoken, this day.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today at TVUUC. My name is Claudia Presley, and I'm the Director of Finance and Operations here. Today is a Generosity Offering Sunday. What that means is that 100% of any contribution that comes in that is not marked as a pledge will go to the general operating fund of TVUUC. The ways you can give are, if you're in the building today, you can give through the offering baskets. There's also a giving kiosk in the lobby, or you can text give to the number 73256, type in TVUUC, and the amount that you would like to give. If you're watching us online, there should be a button at the bottom of your screen that says Give, or you can go to our website, tvuuc.org. There is a tab that says Give. Click on Give Now, or you can also text Give. Once again, that number is 73256, TVUUC, and the amount. Starting the 1st of January, our new 2023 Share the Plate schedule will begin. What that means is that 2 Sundays each month will be to a designated organization. They were nominated by TVUUC members and vetted by the Share the Plate committee. 1 Sunday of each month will be a designated offering Sunday, and then the 4th Sunday of each month will be a Generosity Sunday. So thanks again for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
This carol is a lullaby to the baby.
I grew up in the Episcopal Church where I attended confirmation classes that were hosted by the congregation's minister, Father Hibbert. And I remember very little about what I was taught in those classes, and I remember very little about what material we went over in those classes, but I remember exactly how Father Hibbert laughed. It was like this. Only he didn't need a mic to fill the room with that sound. And here's the thing, if you were in a public place, you know, confirmation class, gathered in a coffee shop, and Father Hibbert laughed, everybody in the room would stop and turn and stare to see what was making that noise. And maybe thinking, do I need to do the Heimlich maneuver or some other intervention? All I can tell you is it'd be kind of embarrassing to be with somebody that's making that kind of noise. But Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you say, and people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And when I think about that confirmation class, I remember exactly how Father Hibbert made us feel. Sometimes a little bit embarrassed, but more often than not, what he made us feel was joy. He made us feel joy. His laugh was so big and so loud it had an echo effect. It would bounce off the walls. For this reason, I think of Father Hibbert this time of year. And I guess maybe I've kind of conflated him with the old Saint Nick, the jolly old elf. There's some conflation between ho, ho, ho and Really, if I tried to do it with the level of volume, I wouldn't be able to finish this sermon. It was loud. So this morning I want to talk about joy. And one of the reasons I want to do it is kind of a corrective. In the Unitarian Universalist Church, historically, there has been less emphasis on emotion in religion, especially on the Unitarian side. Our forebears of long ago were distrustful of emotion, afraid it would overpower reason and overpower our rationality. In the 17th century, the congregational minister Charles Chauncey sort of put this into words, criticizing people attending the revivals of the Great Awakening by saying that the attendees mistook their own passions for divine communications and fancied themselves to be immediately inspired by the Spirit of God when they were really under no other influence than their own overheated imaginations. Ouch! Ouch. Pretty harsh criticism, especially when you consider that the etymological roots of the word enthusiasm come from the Greek God in us. In other words, any worship that is devoid of enthusiasm is devoid of divinity, is devoid of holiness. So this morning, I do want to honor our tradition of honoring reason and rationality because I do think that's an important thing. And I'm going to try to pull these two parts of us together by making a rational argument for joy, a rational argument for ecstasy. Now, you may remember in the year 2007, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright got into a lot of hot water, mainly because one of his congregants, Barack Obama, announced he was running for the presidency, and suddenly all of Jeremiah Wright's video clips of different sermons, often taken out of context, were circulating on the internet, and he was just getting lambasted from side to side, sort of brought out into the limelight against his will. I want to say right from the start that I love the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, and partly because he is a provocateur. Many years ago, he spoke to a gathering of clergy of this denomination, and he began in a very provocative way. He said, you Unitarians, love to talk about reason and love to talk about rationality, but have you ever met someone who's had a rational orgasm? My friend Jim McKinley, who was sitting next to me, the Reverend Jim McKinley, looked around the room, surveyed the ministers gathered there, and turned to me and said, some people in this room have. Now, if my friend Jim McKinley is correct, then we Unitarian Universalists can have a tendency to take rationality a little too far. Some experiences are simply meant to be enjoyed. Sometimes we need to turn off the rational mind, unplug our powers of analysis, and simply experience life itself. Indeed, I would even argue that this switching off of the rational mind is a very rational thing to do. The philosophers teach us that if our logic convinces us that life is not worth living, if our logic convinces us that life is meaningless and purposeless, we should choose life and not logic. We should choose life and not logic. And if our rational minds convince us that there is no reason to feel joy, then we should choose joy and kick our rational mind to the curb. Now, many years ago, when I worked in mental health, I took a group of teenagers to a convention of Narcotics Anonymous. These teenagers were in recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. And at the convention, I quickly realized that one of the most important aspects of that gathering was joy. Sure, there were lectures, and sure, there were serious deliberations, and sure, there were 12-step meetings, but the whole convention felt like a rock concert. The dynamic was celebratory revelry. The dominant feeling was joy. And one of the things I realized about recovery at that moment is recovery is not just about what we give up. It's not about giving up alcohol or drugs only or other addictions. It's about choosing joy. Recovery is about choosing joy. Recovery is about giving up those short-term pleasures that lead to long-term pain. Eckhart Tolle makes a distinction between joy and pleasure that's relevant here. He wrote, "Pleasure is always derived from something outside you, whereas joy arises from within. The very thing that gives you pleasure today will give you pain tomorrow." And I would add, joy doesn't have a hangover. Joy doesn't have withdrawal symptoms. There is no boomerang effect. And joy comes from our connection with everything that was or is or will be. As the Sufi Muslim poet Rumi once wrote, "When you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy. Don't insist on going where you think you want to go. Ask the way to the spring." Ask the way to the spring. Now, many years ago, I attended a sermon that was given at General Assembly, a national gathering of our denomination, and I have no idea what the minister said, but here is what I heard. I heard, "You're not doing enough, you're not doing enough, you're not doing enough, you're not good enough." That's what I heard in my head. It may say more about me than it does the preacher. But in the 19th century, the Unitarian minister Theodore Parker criticized the preachers of his age for doing the same thing, and he wrote, "Preaching to the understanding, the cry is ever duty, duty, work, work. They failed to address with equal power the soul and did not also shout, joy, joy, delight, delight." In America, there was a record number of drug overdoses last year, the highest number on record. And there are many different reasons for that very horrible development. But I think one of them is in a 24/7 capitalist, market-driven society, we are continually surrounded by messages of buy, duty, duty, work, work, and not enough genuine voices that say joy, joy, delight, delight. Now, Theodore Parker was a transcendentalist. And over the last few years, I have been diving deep into a collection of books that were written by the Unitarian Universalist minister Barry Andrews about the transcendentalists. And in those books, I found many good rational arguments for joy, good rational arguments for ecstasy. For instance, the word ecstasy comes from the Greek word ekstasis, meaning to stand outside oneself, looking at life from a selfless or non-egocentric point of view. And if spiritual growth is about moving from being egocentric to being ecocentric, moving from the small picture to the big picture, then ecstasy plays an important role in our spiritual growth. Ralph Waldo Emerson, sort of the chairman of the Transcendentalists, wrote, "Our health and greatness consists in being a channel from which heaven flows to earth, in short, in the fullness in which the ecstatical state takes place in us." A transcendentalist, he wrote, believes in the perpetual openness of the human mind to new influx of light and power, and inspiration and ecstasy. However, he noted that you won't always get encouragement to do this from your peer group, whoever your peer group might be. He said, "In the community in which we live, we'll hardly bear to be told that everyone should be open to ecstasy or divine illumination." In other words, the Transcendentalists teach us when we plan our day or when we plan our week, we should prioritize joy. Prioritize joy. We should prioritize what the psychologist Abraham Maslow called peak experiences. To have a peak experience is to perceive, to have this feeling of the universe as a unified whole, where we have a part in it and where we belong to it. A peak experience seems to lift us to a greater normal height so that we can perceive in a higher than usual way. These peak experiences are ego-transcending, self-forgetful, egoless, and unselfish, while also giving us an experience of the eternal. A peak experience leads us away from fragmentation, conflicts, and polarization toward unity, wholeness, and integration. And a peak experience is often characterized by unspeakable joy. Unspeakable joy. And I mention peak experiences because Abraham Maslow was a rationalist. And so his academic work can be read as a rational argument for joy, a rational argument for ecstasy. The French have a phrase, joie de vivre, joy of living. And this joy of living doesn't have to be in a big or spectacular way. This joy might be felt sitting in a cafe with a friend, or choosing the ingredients for a meal that you're planning for those you love, or tasting a grape in the middle of a vineyard. This kind of joy can be felt listening to a piece of music or simply watching the water flow by in a river as you have a picnic. The French word profiter looks a lot like the English word profiteer, but it means the opposite. It means the opposite. It means profiter is to take advantage of a beautiful day. Profiter is to thrive, to be in the present moment, to make the most of life. The word profiteer is focused on material things, but profiter is focused on immaterial things, the intangible, the unmeasurable, the inexpressible. Today's sermon in a single word could be that French word, profiter. Good piece of advice for us to lead with. The Transcendentalists tell us that our experiences of joy are the foundation on which all religion rests. The forms, the books, the architecture, the mosques, the synagogues, the temples, the cathedrals, all of these are just landmarks and monuments and testimony to this experience. Henry David Thoreau found this joy simply living by himself on the banks of the Walden Pond on land that Emerson loaned to him. Thoreau wrote in his journal, "I am daily intoxicated, and yet no man can call me intemperate. Our joy is our wealth. No run on my bank account can drain it, for my wealth is not possession, but enjoyment." And he encouraged all of us to have a journal. He encouraged everyone he met to have a journal, and he said our journals should be a record of our joy, a record of our ecstasy. So in conclusion, let me say sometimes joy is felt in those quiet moments of solitude beside a pond. And other times it sounds like this. Whatever it sounds like in your life, I hope you will make joy a priority in your life. I hope you will open up your heart and make room for joy. And I hope that joy has an echo effect out in the world so that fields and floods, rocks, hills, and plains will repeat the sounding joy. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. So let us join together in hymn 245 with those words in mind. Joy to the world. Awaits your joyful ministry. Go forward in the power of love. Proclaim the truth that makes us free. As our last act of worship, I invite you to turn and greet your neighbor.
I didn't hear you. Oh, would you like that? like me to ask around? If you can tell me where you live, I can get it. South of the river. Okay, and your rose is Brigitte? Bergen. Rose Bergen. South of the river. Okay, I'll ask them. Yeah, I've been starting to have trouble driving at night.
Yep.
You having surgery soon, or is it still a ways off? Ah. Yeah. Last year, it went through all that. So you're coming to dinner tonight? Thank you. Okay. Well, we will do our best. Thank you.